Hello friends, welcome to the Java tutorial session from Edureka. My name is Ishant and I welcome you all. So we'll be having a very quick introduction to what is Java, why it is useful, what are the various, programming constructs. So let's begin. So what and all we're gonna cover for the day is we'll see quick introduction to Java. We'll see what is Java virtual machine, the runtime environment, and the Java development kit. We'll see the fundamentals of Java as programming language. Then we'll move into the object-oriented fundamentals linked in Java. So we'll discuss about what is object and what is class. Then we'll go with the methods and what are the various access modifiers. So thereafter, guys, we'll discuss methods, iterations, and lastly the arrays. So let's begin the session and we'll start with introduction to Java. Now, when we talk about Java, so Java is a high-level programming language. Now, why you use programming language? You use programming language to develop a software that is an application. So Java is a programming language with which you can write a platform independent software. James Gosling was the key member of this project, right, under the company Sun Microsystems, and we also call him the father of Java. Java is free and open source, right? And other than this, Java was originally called as green. From the green, they came up with the oak, and then they finally renamed it to Java. So Java is basically, if you talk about the dictionary meaning of Java, it's coffee bean. And it's an island in Indonesia where the first coffee bean was discovered. So Java works on the principle write once, run anywhere, which means that if you write the code in Java, once you have written a code, so you can run your application on any platform. So this is basically the platform independent nature of Java. Now, the various buzzwords which actually make Java, a language to be used, the very first is easy. Now, many times we as developers, we might find Java as a tough language, but this is not the correct intention on it. So when we are talking about languages like C and C++, so if you are already aware with the languages C and C++, you will actually find Java as easy because the syntactical approach and the OOPS features, they are taken from C and C++ itself. Then Java is distributed, so we can develop client server applications. Java is highly secure. So the banks, the payment gateways, they rely on Java. Java is object oriented. So object oriented programming structure is nothing, it's a software design methodology, right? So how are you going to write a software using objects? Then we got Java having a robust nature in a way that if there are some errors which occur at runtime, we'll be able to handle them so that our application won't crash. So we call them the exceptions and we use try catch mechanism to handle all these errors at runtime. So Java is interpreted, Java is platform independent, Java is portable, Java is multi-threaded. Now, there are so many other features linked to Java. Platform independent feature is one of the features which makes Java to run on any operating system. So when I say any operating system, so typically we are trying to come up and understand that it is basically Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac, Solaris. So all these operating systems, they have Java virtual machine pre-installed, which makes Java as platform independent. So we can write, multi-threaded structures when we are doing programming in Java. It means that at the same time, we can do multiple jobs. For example, if we are writing a music application, we can listen to the song, parallelly we can browse the other music files, and parallelly we can download some media file. So that's what multi-threaded is. Now, what is JVM, JRE, and JDK? So guys, Java Virtual Machine is a system software which is pre-installed within the operating system. So it is the responsibility of the OS vendor to include it in the OS. So you need not to install it. So main purpose of JVM is to execute the compiled version of your Java source. So that's like bytecode. So when you write a program in Java, you compile it, you get a bytecode, and JVM executes the bytecode. Since JVM is available in all the operating systems, so your bytecode can be executed on any OS. So this makes your Java as platform independent programming language. Guys, JRE is Java Runtime Environment. Now, this is the environment within which JVM runs. So it is having some set of libraries and other files that JVM will use at runtime. So we also call it as runtime environment of Java or Java RTE as in short. The next is JDK. So JDK is the development kit. It's gonna contain the APIs. So when I say APIs, that's like application programming interfaces. It's gonna contain set of defined code snippets or libraries which we are going to use in our program. So you can consider that it's a collection of predefined code snippet. It's collection of tools. For example, you wanna compile your Java program. So JDK gives you a tool called Java C, with the help of which you can compile it. So JDK is collection of library using which we will be developing our Java application, and it contains a lot of development tools. Now, Java as programming language. So guys, here we focus on object oriented features and we try to write software using this object oriented design methodology. So objects and classes, they are the two key fundamentals when we are talking about Java as programming language. Let's understand what are objects. So anything which you can feel, touch, see is an object. So we say an object is a real world entity. So laptop, fan, chair, table, mobile phone, anything which you can see around you, even you and me, we are objects. So every object is having a state and a behavior. For example, let's say that I am sitting as of now. So I'm in a state, right? So I'm sitting. So behavior is where I am having this, a breathing process going in and out. So this is respiration system, right? So we can have state, we can have behavior. Now, when we talk about an object in a real world entity, right? So that is separate. But when we talk about the object in a computer science term, we say an object is a multi-value container. So just like a box. So the way we store data in the box, right? So I'm gonna take an example here. Let's say you got a box filled with cookies. So assorted cookies now, right? So not just only butter cookies, you have choco chip cookies, you have this cookie, that cookie. So an object is like that. So in computer science, an object is a container which can contain data, either homogeneous type or heterogeneous type. So it's a data storage container. So an object can have behavior. So when I say behavior, it means we're going to have some functionalities which is going to process the data. Now let us say user is having two attributes, email and password. So email and password is the data within an object user. The functionality can be login user, save user, delete user, or register user. So which will be processing the data. Now every object which will be created when we will write the program. So when the object will be created in the RAM area, the object will have a unique ID. So we call this unique ID as a hash code. Now every object in Java is stored in heap as a data structure in the RAM. So there we are using this technique called hashing to store the objects. So hash code is a unique ID linked with each and every object. So moving from objects to classes now. So guys, class is a blueprint of object having various properties. So you can even say that class is nothing. It's a textual representation that how an object will look like in the memory. So having said that, I'm going to write box description. So let's say there is a box having the weight as 10 grams, having this much height, this much width, this much color. So that's like textually I'm writing something. So similarly, when we are going to program, we need to write this class. But when we are writing this class, this is a textual description. So we are programming, but whatever you are writing in the class, that is basically the property of object. So what classes can have? Classes can have fields and methods. So there are two things which your classes will contain. So they contain fields as in the primary data. So for example, user as an object or a class will have name, email, phone, gender, state, city, etc. and etc. So all those properties, they are fields. Then it can have methods. For example, save the user, register the user, delete the user. So all these are the methods which are going to process the data. Now, other than the fields and methods, we can have even more things. So we got something known as constructors, which are used to provide some initial values to the fields. Then we got blocks, which are very much like constructors. We even have nested classes and interfaces. So we can have class within a class, or we can have interfaces. Now, interfaces, they are one more concept, but that is something which is a bit different from classes. So that we're not going to take here now. So moving ahead, after the class and object structure, so we will be understanding different, you can say, structures which we are going to use in our program. So in the fundamentals of Java, we will be now having a look into operators, data types, and variables. So we'll start with something known as variables. A variable is nothing, it's a storage container. So variable will hold the data. For example, age will hold the data 20. Name will hold the data, for example, John. So variable can be a local variable, which will be created in a method or in a block. Then a variable can be an instance variable. So instance variable is the attribute of an object. Static variable belongs to the class. So local variable belongs to a scope, for example, methods. Instance variables belongs to objects. Static variables belongs to class. So variable, why it is termed as variable? Because its data can be manipulated. So after having said that we got a variable which will hold the data, so guys, we need to decide the type for the variable, right? Now variables, they are divided into two types, primitive and non-primitive. So non-primitives are sometimes referred to as reference types as well. In the primitive, we got Boolean and numeric. So Boolean is like logical one, either true or false. In the numeric, we have character and integral. So character we have char, and integral we have two further types, integer and floating point. So in the integer we got byte short, int long, and in floating point we have float and double. So Boolean, true, false, char, any character on your keyboard, or the Unicode or the ASCII code. Integral types is all the mathematical real numbers. When we talk about floating point, you got decimal values as well. So let's say float pi assigned 3.14f, int age assigned 30. So primitives are the one which will hold the value. Non-primitives like array and string, they are the data types which will hold the references. So they are known as reference type. They are not going to store the value, but they are going to store some hash code. All right, so they're gonna have some reference to the real container with the data, but not the real data they will hold. The next is operators. Now, once you have the data available in the variables, for example, we got, number 1 as 10, number 2 as 20, and you need to find which is the greatest number. So once you store the data in the variables using data types, you need to perform operation on data. So to perform the operation on data, we got various different operators out here. Right, so to begin with, guys, we got something known as arithmetic operators. So all the mathematical operators, bitwise operators, they're gonna work on the bits. Then we got logical operators. So we are going to compare conditions. For example, number 1 greater than number 2, and that's like logical part, number 1 greater than number 3. So we got and, which says that both the conditions should be true. So same way we have or, which says either one should be true. Then we got relational, greater than equal to, less than equal to, greater than, less than, equal to, and not equal to. We have ternary operator, so where we can decide the kind of condition based who is what, right? So it's kind of if else shortcut. Then assignment operators, so how you gonna assign the data into the container. And lastly, we have unary operators, as in plus plus, minus minus, then not and negation. So shift operators, they will be working on shifting the bits towards the left or to the right, and triple right shift is supposed to work only on the positive numbers. So these are the various operators which can perform operation on your data types. The next thing which we have is methods. So guys, what are methods? Now, as the name method means some way, right? So method means some way of doing a thing. I can even say method as a procedure. So remember chemistry labs in the childhood days, right? So we got procedural steps. So method is the same. Method will contain certain set of instructions which will be executed one after the other. So when we are talking about the methods, guys, it's gonna be certain instructions. So we can even say set of code that is grouped together to perform a specific operation. For example, login user. So we need to check for the email ID and the password whether it is filled or not. The second step is whether they are correctly formed or not. The third step would be checking on the server whether they exist or not. If they exist, then we're gonna give a message to the user, login successful, else login is a failure. So you see, method will be performing a specific operation. And why we create method? So that it can be used again and again. Now, method must be written within a class. So you need to follow this principle. If you're going to create a method, you need to write within a class. Each method will have a signature, right? So when we talk about signature, it means what is the method's return type, what it's gonna return, what are the arguments or inputs you are going to give to the method. So Java provides two types of methods, right? So predefined or standard library methods. So these are the methods which we are going to use. For example, print line. It will print a line on the console. It's a predefined method. Then we got a user defined method. For example, login user, register user, order products, right? So all these methods which we want the way we want to come up with them. So we will define them the way we want. So that's like user defined methods. So to use a method, there are two important steps which you need to perform. The first thing is method initialization, which means that you are going to define the method. You're going to write what and all your method will do. We call it the definition as well. The next thing is method invocation. So you need to execute the same method. Now, any method which we are going to create, so that's like initialization part. So method can have a modifier. So it's like where we can have public, private, protected, default. So they have their own specific meanings, which we'll see in our upcoming slides. Return type, what your method wants to acknowledge. Then the name of the method, then any inputs which you are going to provide to the method. And what method will do, you write in the block. So method can be parameterized or non-parameterized. It means either it can have parameters over here or it can have no parameters. The definition will contain what your method wants to do. We can even overload the method, which means use the same name of the method again and again and just keep on changing the input list so that the same method name will be easy to remember, and we can just pass the different set of inputs and we'll be able to have the different flow of the execution. Now, when you want to execute the method, you write down the method name and put a semicolon in the end, so you'll be able to execute it. So if you have inputs, you pass those inputs. Now, method can take either the value parameter or the reference parameter. When we talk about the value, it means all primitives: int, float, char, long, double, boolean. And when I talk about references, it means arrays or strings or the user defined objects. Now, when I'm talking about these modifiers which are used with respect to functions, so guys, there are 4 different types of access modifiers, and these modifiers, they are going to restrict the scope. So it's basically limiting the access till where the guy is accessible, right? So they can be applied on a class, on a constructor, on a variable, on a method, or on a data member. Data member means attribute or field of an object. So we got default, public, private, and protected as 4 different access modifiers. So moving ahead, guys, now let us understand these 4 access modifiers. So default is the one which can be accessed within the same class. It can be accessed within the same package subclass. Then same package but non-subclass, we can access the default, but in a different package, in a subclass, or in a different package in a non-subclass, we cannot access it. Public is something which is accessible everywhere, right? And we got private, which is accessible nowhere. So it's only accessible within the class, right? Protected is accessible everywhere, right? So we can access it everywhere, but protected, once it goes outside the package, it starts behaving like private. So it's not exactly like public, but it is somewhere like default. So you cannot access it outside the package, but at the same time, it can be inherited outside the package. Now, let's understand how we can write a Java program. So if you want to write a Java program, so you need to have an IDE first. So in the integrated development environment, you will be writing your Java program, and we are going to write our very first Java program, which will just print out some string. So let's see how we will write. So guys, we need to use an IDE or integrated development environment. So IDE over here means a software which can help us to create a software. So I'm using Eclipse. You can use IntelliJ or JDeveloper or any other software which you are comfortable to work in, right? Which supports Java development, of course. So this is the standard view of Eclipse, and in Eclipse, I'm gonna go to the file and say a new of Java project. So when I say a new Java project, so here let's give Java tutorial demo, or let's say Java tutorial. I'm gonna say next here. I gave the project name. So now you see src where we will write our source code, and bin where our bytecode will be generated. So in Eclipse, compilation will happen automatically for us. So let's say finish. And now here we get the src directory. But if you go on the disk, so here if you will see, we got this session 24. So you see Java tutorial here, and you see src and bin both are empty. So going to the src, let's do a right click and say a new class. So you need not to write the code from the scratch. Eclipse will generate some snippets for you. So you say a new class, give the name here. So I'm gonna say first program, and I will choose this main method, right? Public static void main. So now you say finish. So what you'll see is a first program.java code snippet is created for us. At the same time, in my src, I got a Java code, and in the bin, I got a bytecode. So bin as in binary contains bytecode, whereas src contains source code. So we will now say over here, so let's remove this comment, and I'm going to say system dot out dot print a line which says hello from Edureka. So guys, this is a very basic Java program. So one line of code. System is a built-in class, and we got out as a reference to a print writer object, and print line is a method which is going to print the string on the console. So let me run this code here as Java application. So what you see is hello from Edureka. So guys, this is the very first Java program which you can very easily write. So it's very simple. So let's now come back here. So when you're writing this Java program, we have this public static void main. This is the method which will be executed by the JVM, right? So we call it a main method. Now, what is this public static void main? So guys, public is an access modifier, which means the method main is accessible anywhere. Static is a keyword which says that the main method belongs to the class. Void is the return type, which means return nothing. Main is the name of the method that JVM will start looking, and JVM is going to execute this main method. We got inputs to the main as an array of string. So we call them the command line arguments, which we can pass and we can use in the main method. So this is the very quick introduction to how we can write a Java program. So now we will see in a bit more detailed way. So guys, when we are supposed to write programs, so there are various different constructs which we are supposed to use. The very first is iterative statements. So if there is some program which you want to write and it requires similar instructions to be repeated again and again, we use these iterative approach rather than rewriting the same instruction again and again. So iterative statements, they start with a loop called for loop, which says that you start with some initial point and you have an ending point till the condition is met. I'll keep on running the loop. I will execute the statements for you till this condition meets. So this is how the for loop will look like in syntax. So in the for loop, you need to come up and put your initial point, condition is your ending point, and increment or decrement operation, that how you're gonna move from your initial point to the ending point in the condition. So till this condition is meeting, so your code block will be executed. Now the way you got for loop, in a similar way we have while loop. So while is just a different way of coming up with the for loop. So they are just different in the way of syntax, right? So they work in the same environment, same way. Then while loop says put me a condition here. So syntax is different. So we'll mention some statements here. So we'll see a difference when we will write down the code. You will be understanding it in a more better way. But do while is a separate kind of a loop. So do while says you execute the statements and I'll check the condition in the end. Now this is the kind of a loop where even if condition is false, it's gonna execute once. So guys, this is one small syntax on do while. So you write the code before you check the condition. You check the condition later and you need to put a semicolon in the end as a part of syntax. So let's have a small program which will make us understand how to use these iterative statements. So coming here, I'm gonna write one more Java program. So do a right click on SRC and say a new class. So I'm gonna say iterative statements with the main method. Now consider that there is a variable called number whose value is 5. So I'm gonna write this variable called I, who is 1. So this is the starting point, right? This is the starting point. Now I will write down a statement here which goes like system.out.println. I'll say num a space i's are plus num into I. So if I will run this code here, so you'll see what will be printed is 5 ones are 5. So I'm going to print the table of 5, right? So I can come here and I can define. So I will write down SYSO and control space bar, hit enter. So you get the system.out.println. So here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say a CISO statement and I'm gonna say table of plus the number, right? And this is how when I will run this code, so you'll get to see this statement. Okay, so let me remove these. Okay, so when I run this code, so you see table of 5. 5 ones are 5. But how you gonna come up to the next part? So I will say, let us increment the value of I and then reprint the same statement. So when I will run this code, you get to see the next statement as 5 twos are 10. Because I is now incremented here to 2 and we get to see 5 twos are 5 into 2. So it means that I have to write this statement somewhere around 10 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this statement somewhere around 10 times. And you see we are doing a repetition, guys. So this is true about the fact that we are doing a repetition here. So running the code here. So it says 5 tens are 50. So very well understandable is the fact that the code repetition is happening. So we're repeating the same instructions again and again, right? So when certain situation arises, what you need to do is you need to come here, right? So let us say CISO. I'm just gonna come here and change the number. So let's change the number, right? So I'm gonna say that the number is now 7. So changing the value of the number as 7 here. And what I'll do is I'll just comment out these statements. So number is 7 and now I'm gonna say for I assigned 1, I less than equal to 10 and I plus plus. So that is so easy. So if your number and I is not created above, so let's comment out the whole code here. So what I can do is I can simply come here and say declare the number as 7 and I as 1. So I'm gonna say table of 7. I'll just do a hard code here. I'll say table of 7. So you can declare the number right into the loop. You can thereafter come up and say a variable like I as 1. So this goes condition part and this is how you're gonna increment the loop. Now I will write the same statement within this loop here. So now it's gonna be 7 ones are 7 into 1. Then I will be incremented. So increment happens after all the instructions in the loop, they are executed. So thereafter I will go as 2. So 7 twos are 14 till I value is less than equal to 10. Now when you run this code here, So it's gonna show you the table of 7. So guys, for loop is a loop by which we are able to execute our instructions in a very neat and clean way. So rather than writing so much of code again and again, we actually have just 3 instructions now. So even you don't consider this brace, right? So the way we got for loop in action, in a similar way, we can have while loop in action. So I can declare the number outside. I need to come up with this I as 1. And I will say while, that's like till number 9 has to be printed from 1 to 10. So till I is less than equal to 10. You write down the same statement, but here you need to increment in the loop. Now I is 1, 1 is less than equal to 10, condition is satisfied, you enter the loop, and thereafter you print out 9 ones are 9, and then you say I plus plus, that's like 2. So 2 is less than equal to 10, then 3, then 4, then 5, up till 10. So you run the code here. So this is the table of 9. So let's say 9 here, and when you run this code, you see the table of 9. Now, if I value is 100, so if you see the value of I as 100, you run this code here, so you will not get to see the table. Why? Because 100 as an initial value of I is not less than equal to 10. So if the condition is not met, this loop will not run. So the way you have while loop, in a similar way, exactly, I'll just use the same while. The only thing is this, so this while condition checking goes in the end. That is it. So loop shall run in the same way. So you get to see the same output. What is the difference? If the value of I is 100. So now you see the difference between while and do while. In while case, condition was checked at the entry, but in case of do while loop, we cannot have the condition checking in the beginning. So we have it in the end. So while you check the condition at entry, whereas do while you check the condition at exit. So even if condition is not gonna support us, so this do while loop will work at least once. So for and while, they are different in syntaxes, they work in the same way, but do while as a different syntax work also differently. So guys, this is quick introduction to the loops. So we even have more in the loops here, right? So we have something like nesting of loops here and there, a lot of other stuff. Next is the conditional statement. So guys, in our programming structure, we have so many conditions to test. Let me take one example. If username is empty or password is empty, then we need to tell the user that please fill in the username and password first. So you have either if or you have nested if. So there are two different types of if now, which can check the conditions. So if can be a kind of a condition checking. So if the condition is true, the body of if will work. If the condition is false, then we are out of the part. So even we have else part which can handle the other part. If the condition is not true or if it is false, then we can have an else part. So we can even have if within the if, we call it a nested if. So if the outer if block is true, then you get into the inner if. We'll see it in the code part, it's gonna become more easier. So this is how we got a syntax if within the if. So conditional statements, right? So we can have if else or a ladder of if else. So when I'm talking about if else, so if the condition is true, right? So body of if will be executed, other way around, it's gonna be the body of else. And for the synthetical approach, so you got if and else. So majorly when you are writing the codes, so you must have an else part along with the if part, because you should be handling the other way around as well. Now the ladder of if else is where we have multiple conditions to be tested. So we need to test more than one condition. So this is like if, else if, else if, else if, and lastly you will have the else part. But if you want, you can replace the ladder of if else with the switch case. Now switch case is a replacement to the ladder if else. So here the benefit is only that statement will be executed which will match. But in case of ladder if else, we have to match so many conditions. So let us see the syntax here. So we got switch and the cases. So if expression matches the value, only that case will be executed. But in case of ladder if else, if the last condition is supposed to match, so the above conditions will be tested before that last condition comes into the action. So switch is more effective now. So guys, let us see one quick example on conditional constructs. So let's say a new class here, and I'm going to say conditions with the main method. So we'll take on very basic example. Let's say we have a string called username, which is blank, and string called email, which is again blank. So I will check if username dot is empty, or let it be password, guys, or password, right? So, and the else part. So if any one of these two is empty, we're gonna say to the user, please enter username or password. In the else case, I'm gonna have a nested if else now. So I'm gonna check that if username dot equals, let's say John at some example.com, and password. So this is just a hard, logical check. Let's say pass 1 2 3. So thereafter I can say CISO, welcome to Edureka's LMS John. In the else case, we will say CISO, please enter valid credentials. So this is one quick example of if and else, right? So when you run this code, so here you are supposed to get one message, please enter username or password, right? So I'll enter username here. So it goes like John at example.com. When you run this code here, you again get please enter username or password, because any one of empty will result into it. So let's enter the password as some pass. When you run this code, now you get to see that we are getting please enter valid credentials, because my password did not match. But when I will enter the correct password here and I will run this code here, so it's gonna say welcome to Edureka's LMS John. So guys, a small program on if else. So conditional constructs, they form an important part. Consider one more example. Let's say we have a boolean which is GPS status. This is by default true, and I'll have one more boolean which goes like internet status, which goes like true. Now consider that when you go into your phone settings and you turn on the internet and turn on the GPS, so these flags, they become true. And if you just turn off your GPS, so this guy goes like false, right? So false is a state where GPS is turned off. Now I'm going to say that if internet status, so within this if, I'm gonna say if GPS status. So here I'm gonna say CISO, you can use Google Maps. In the else case, I'm gonna come here and say CISO, please enable GPS and try again. And here in the else case, if you are not connected to the internet, I'm gonna say please enable internet and try again. So these are basic examples here which you guys can follow to understand how the conditions work. So it says please enable GPS and try again, and in case you have both internet and GPS on, so it will say you can use Google Maps. So guys, conditions in programming languages, they are important to understand. Now in conditions, right, so we have something known as jump statements. So we can use some keywords by which we can understand these. So we got a statement called break. So if you are having a loop, right, so majorly these, sorry, my bad, so these are not using conditions, but they are using the loops. So if you are having a loop, the break is a keyword which will terminate the loop. It's gonna just terminate the loop and will come out of the loop, right? So it is used in while, for, do while, and in a switch case. Now consider a use case where you want to use this loop. I'll give you one real life example. You are there in a lift which goes from the floor number 0 to floor number 100, and you want to get down to floor number 30. So when you press the button 30, so lift will go from 0 to 30, and there it will break. It will not go till 100 and come down. So that's like the break statement. So break statement will ensure that you come out of the loop, and with the condition you can check when you have to break. So is the continue statement, but continue statement is basically going to skip the execution of statement. So it's opposite of break now. So break will terminate the loop, but continue will make the loop to go into the next iteration, skipping the execution part, right? So continue is not going to terminate the loop. Rather, it's gonna skip the statements. So again, you can use the keyword continue based on some condition. Then we have a return statement, guys. So return statement is majorly used when you are going to return a value from the method. So it's basically the acknowledgement of a method, and it sends the program control back to the method caller. So moving ahead, the data type of the return value should always be equal to the data type of the method declared in the return value. So if there is a void hello, void means return nothing. If there is int add number, so you must return an integer number, right? So that is what we are trying to come up and understand. Okay, so now you got the last topic for this session. So I hope you are having fun here. You are able to understand few of the fundamentals which we have discussed so far. So guys, as in a variable can hold only one single value. So when I declare age, it can hold only one single number. And when we are talking about arrays in Java, they are meant to have more than one value. So it is a multi-value container, but this guy is a homogeneous container. Now in the beginning, I discussed that assorted cookie box. So we have choco chip cookies, we have butterscotch cookies, we have vanilla cookies. So all these cookies which we have in different flavors, in different sizes in a box. So that's like an object. But array is cookies of same type in a box with a fixed size. So let's say we have a pack of 10 cookies in a box. So size is fixed and all of them are the same cookie, same type. Now that's like what we call it as an array. So in Java, guys, how you create an array? So you need to write a reference variable which points to what kind of array you want. So you need to mention the data type. For example, my array is a new integer of 5. So this way you will have 5 different elements created in the heap area. So new will create array dynamically in the heap. So elements in an array, they will be divided in an index approach. So you will have indexes for these arrays. Now, for example, you can say 0 is 10 and so on and so forth. So you can say 1 is 20, then 2 is 30, 3 is 40, 4 is 50. So you'll have all the values filled in your array. Now, array can also be a two-dimensional array, which means it's basically an array of arrays. So it's a collection of 1D arrays. So we use it when we have dimensions to the data. So you can declare that I want two arrays with each array having two elements. That's like 2D array. So we have 0th arrays, 0th element, 0th arrays, first element. Similarly, first arrays, 0th element, first arrays, first element, right? So this is how you're gonna fill all of them with the values. So let's see one small example on arrays. So I'm gonna write a new Java class here. So this goes like arrays demo with the main method. So I'll create an array. I will say int and a bracket. Let's say AR1 is 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So this is an array with elements known to us, right? So array with elements known to us beforehand. So you know the elements beforehand. So there can be an array where we have no idea what elements can be. For example, int bracket ARR2 is a new integer and we say 5 elements. So here by default, all the elements are 0. Now why you need an array? So let's say there is variable a with the value as 10. You cannot put 10 comma 20. You cannot have more than one value in a, right? So a can hold only one value, but your array can hold lot of data for us. But there is one big structural difference. So whenever I will print out this guy called a, so this will give me the value, right? So it's gonna print the value. And when I will say print me ARR1, and thereafter I'm gonna say print me ARR2. So what you will see is that it is printing us two references. So ARR1 and ARR2, they are not arrays, they are reference variables. So they are holding the hash code in a hexadecimal format. So they are not containing the data directly, but they are containing the data indirectly. So they are pointing out to an array in the heap, right? So here, when I am talking about ARR1 and ARR2, so they are reference variables containing hash code for real array container created in heap area of RAM. So ARR1 and ARR2, they will not show you the data. If you want to see the data, so you need to come up and say ARR1 of 0 and let's say ARR2 of 0. So when I say ARR1 of 0, it means this guy 10. But ARR2, so we don't have any elements, so it will show me all the elements as 0. So 10 and 0. So if you want to see all the elements, so what you need to do is you need to put up a loop, right? So you can say for int begin with the 0th index, go till the length of the array, and then say I plus plus. And thereafter I'm gonna say print me ARR1 of I. Along with that, I'm just gonna put up a space here. Now when you run this code here, what you will see is all the elements in the ARR1. So 0th index, first index, second index, third index, and the fourth index. Now there is one more way by which you can read the elements. So you can say int some value in ARR2. We call this loop as special loop, enhanced for loop, or sometimes it is also referred to as for each loop. So this loop will automatically begin with the 0 index, goes till the last index, and the values, they will be copied into this variable called val. So will variable name val can be any name of your choice. Now I'm gonna say CISO with the print statement, which prints in the same line. Now what you will see is that you have all the elements as 0. Now why all the elements are 0? Because here I'm talking about this guy called AR1. We already know the elements beforehand, but here the elements are not known, so all the elements are by default 0. So what I can do is I can write the data. So let's write the elements. So I'm gonna say AR1 of 2 is 200. So the second index, so this is the 0th index, first index, and the second index. So the guy 30 is now replaced with 200. So I'm gonna say ARR2 of 0 is 10, and ARR2 of, let's say, 2 is 500. Now when you run this code here, so what you see is this guy's second index is 200, and this guy's 0th index and first index is 10 and 500. So this is what we got, a quick introduction to arrays. So the way you have 1D arrays, in a similar way we have 2D arrays. So for 2D arrays, we have this collection as array of arrays. So you can have this syntax here where you can write the arrays of your choice. So this is my first array, and this goes like my second array. So this ARR3 is having two arrays. So this array is available on 0th index, and this array is available on first index. So what I can do is I can simply come here and say ARR3's 0th arrays I want first element. Similarly, ARR3's first arrays I want fifth element. So guys, what is 0 and 1 and what is 1 and 5? So 0th arrays first element is 20, and first arrays fifth element, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that is 60. So let us run this code and see whether we are correct or not. So I'm going to run this code here. You see the element 20 and 60. So what I'll do is I'll just put one empty print line. So here we are with 20 and 60. So guys, this is what we got as in 1D arrays and 2D arrays. So thank you so very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. So once again, this is Ishant on behalf of Edureka. So stay in touch, guys. So do subscribe to our channels and like our Facebook page. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye, guys.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!